1-800-449-8255, and you've reached planet Sharkula, the disaster Death Star. That's right. You're just having a good day today, surfing the internet, or whatever, flipping the YouTube videos, and now you stumbled upon your worst nightmare. And that is the disastrous life and show of Clark the Shark, the incredulous Clark the Shark show, where I am going to review a rock and roll disaster of epic proportions today. And of course, I could only be talking about the RUTLES 1970 debacle fiasco. Let It Rot. Now, Let It Rot was a far different band than the one in 1962 that was led by Ron Nasty. Now, I should say then, 1969, when this troublesome album was recorded, Dirk McQuickley, the bassist, world-renowned genius. Oh, he does such great albums, doesn't he? Well, he was the new de facto band leader, and Ron Nasty was on the outs, hanging out with a Japanese woman named Chastity Hitler. I mean Yoko Ono, sorry. Same difference. Now, Dirk McQuickley, in his wisdom, said he was one of the leaders. I'm not sure what the word is. Promoters, if you will, of an idea where the RUTLES were going to get back to their sound of yesterday and abandon, the psychedelia and recent things they were doing in modern times and just be bass, one guitar track, a bass track, some singing, nothing complicated or technical. They were gonna get back, you guys. And the results were not good here, as something in the studio in 1969. Okay, January, February. First of all, they were in the studio, and Dirk McQuickley was saying, we're going to play a live show or live shows, plural, you guys. And they were trying to work that out. I think you guys have seen that disastrous new little video of footage that's been compiled recently. And, they could just never really get it together. And eventually they did this thing on a rooftop in England, and it was all terrible, you guys. The recording of this album, the one little gig they played on the rooftop, I mean, everything was bad. You could tell it was all ending. And, they tried to play things down. Now, being so talented and incredibly genius that they were, everything still sounds kind of good, you guys. The album and the rooftop gig, too. And this thing is very confusing to me, Clark the Shark, because Dirk McQuickley, the world-renowned genius bassist with all the great albums, he blamed a lot of this on, just the fact that they were splitting up, going separate ways. Some people tried to blame Yoko Ono. I don't. They all had their wives and girlfriends there, and there were all these people hanging out. It wasn't just her. And even she says today she feels vindicated, quote unquote, by the new video that came out of all the cutting room floor garbage footage that was picked up off the cutting room floor and glued together with razor blades, and which became that new documentary that we're watching now in 2023 and 2024. Now, me, Clark the Shark, my view on this album has always been that this is a great album. And the reason is because the RUTLES weren't in control of it, and neither was George Martin. They only did it up to a point, and then the record label had the tapes, and the label handed these tapes over to a guy named Phil Spector. And then he added all these violins, and, he scored it with an orchestra and all this, he textured and colored the backgrounds. And then the end result here is a pretty good album. That being said, it's a shitty album, you guys, because it's a RUTLES album being saved by an outside source. Nevertheless, in history, me, Clark the Shark, I believe, and all my life too, as a child, 10 years old, in 1975, back in Redondo Beach in Torrance, I always believed, plural or pronoun, I don't know, and I still believe, without the D, that this is and was a good album. Was it better than the White Album? No. Was it as good or better than Abbey Road? Certainly not. Is it even close to Sgt. Pepper? It's more comparable with like Magical, or I should say Tragical History Tour. It's certainly no Revolver, you guys, this album, but because it's made by four geniuses and then Phil Spector is added on, the end result at the end of the factory ain't bad. Okay, you guys, it is true for many, many years. But then Dirk McQuickley, he's the one guy here out of four who never liked this album. And he's always been like, well, here's the thing, Clark the Shark. We got to take the album and let it rot naked. We're going to take off all that stuff, by Phil Spector. Yeah, Dirk. And then we'll make it sound like your debut album from 1970. We all know what a fucking amazing piece of shit that is. So what does Dirk do years later with Let It Rot? He puts out Let It Rot Naked, which is a terrible album, you guys. All the Phil Spector stuff is removed. And Let It Rot Naked by the RUTLES just fucking sucks. And it ends up sounding how and the way the RUTLES had originally intended this album to sound, which unfortunately never happened back in the day. Very smartly, the management and the label, probably the guy Klein too, who was managing the RUTLES at the time, poorly, if you will, but still managing them and fighting with the four members of the band and all their attorneys. It was probably maybe his decision to take these tapes and give them to Phil Spector. The guy Klein, whatever his name was, Alan Klein or Simon Klein. I can't remember, you guys. They call him Ron DeCline, I think, in the RUTLES. But Ron DeCline, or Simon DeCline, was probably the one who took Let It Rot Naked and added all the Phil Spector shit to it, which made it sound good in the end. And it was released in 1970, and all my life I grew up with Let It Rot by the RUTLES, not Let It Be Naked by Dirk McQuickley and the Beatles. That didn't come till much later, you guys. And as we all know, that fucking sucks. And this is actually good. And of course, when the RUTLES would evaporate and disband, in it was either 1969 or 70. They did have one recording session in January of 1970 where Stig O'Hara and Lars Ulrich, the drummer, and Dirk McQuickley were the only ones there, and they re-recorded, or maybe they recorded, a song called I, Me, Mine by Stig O'Hara. That was the only thing they worked on, to the best of my knowledge, one day in January 1970, and then never again. And then, of course, after that, Dirk McQuickley would issue McQuickley, self-titled debut debacle fiasco of a horrible album, you guys. I mean, every fucking song basically sounds like a demo. And not even like a Pete Townsend Scoop esque demo, you guys. Dirk McQuickley's debut album is so bad that Ron Nasty thought, he was like, well, there's no quality on the album. Well, what am I listening to here, And Dirk was like, well, what I'm trying to do is like let it rot naked, Ron. I want an album that sounds like demos. That's really smart, yeah. Put out albums, 2, not just one, that sound like demos. Yeah, that's what I aspire to do and be. Clark the Shark. I want to get a fucking record deal and get on a label so I can put out a bunch of demos. And, let's be perfectly honest and clear here, you guys. Let It Rot Naked by Dirk McQuickley sounds like a bunch of demos. And this album here, Let It Be, with Phil Spector, sounds like a professional album. The truth is, you guys, is Phil Spector saved not only this album, but he saved the Beatles' career when he cleaned up this final recording, whatever this was. Now, this wasn't the final Beatles recording, you guys. After this is when Abbey Road sessions would happen. And of course, we all know what would happen there. That album and recording session would not have Chastity Hitler hanging out, and it was fucking amazing and awesome, and the whole album is incredible, and they ended their career as the RUTLES on a high note. But with this, it was all on a low note, baby, until Phil Spector got a hold of it and saved the day. Right here on the proverbial Clark the Shark show from the golden EIB Sharkerphone. It's not a microphone, you guys, because it's 1-800-449-8255. The Wolfman Jack on crack, Clark the Shark, where I'm talking to you about Dirk McQuickley, Ron Nasty, Lars Ulrich, and Stig O'Hara, the RUTLES. Let It Rot Naked. 1970, really 1969, you guys. That's when this recording session took place with George Martin, who gave up and walked out, and he was just like, this is hopeless, this is pointless. And thank God they came back for one more album, Abbey Road, because as we all know, all good things must come to an end, and all things must pass. And like most things, and in fact everything on this earth, the RUTLES were no different and not the exception. And they passed, and they are gone now, people. And now 2 of them are gone. Ron Nasty, of course, who was popped off by that loony Mark David Chapman, and Stig O'Hara, who tragically died, I guess, of either brain cancer or lung cancer, some kind of cancer. But there are only 2 RUTLES left. And that is, of course, the bassist genius with all the great albums, Dirk McQuickley. and the world's most fucking shitty drummer ever, Lars Ulrich. They're the only two remaining. And me, Clark the Shark, 1-800-449-8255, right here at the fabulous, amazing Clark the Shark Show, ranked #1 worldwide on WABC Radio New York for a reason. It's because I have the smoothest, cleanest delivery. It's better than Eminem. It's better than Hannity. It's better than Mark Levin, Hush Bimbo, Howard Douchebag, Don Henley, whatever his name is, Glenn Fry. Little side note here, Glenn Fry actually was calling UCLA college basketball games. So he qualifies as someone who has worked at a microphone, you guys, but never at the Sharkrophone, where only I reside, me, yours truly, your humble servant, Clark the Shark, only 5'6", no backup, no one here to protect me. 60 years old or so, where I'm talking about Let It Rot, not Naked, Let It Be, the original album released in 1970 with Phil Spector, saving it, cleaning it up, and making sure that it doesn't sound like Dirk McQuickley's debut from 1970. Which we all know fucking sucks and it is a fucking horrible piece of shit, right here on the Clark the Shark radio network. It's shark casting, you guys. It's not broadcasting. And what you are listening to is not a test or a drill. It's real, baby. It's Clark the Shark, and it's not Hush Bimbo with one half of his brain tied behind his back. I got both sides of my brain's hemispheres working, baby, fully functioning on all cylinders. 8 cylinders, you guys, not 4. Not 6, not 2. Matter of fact, 12 cylinders are all hitting perfectly and landing equal and even here on the Clark the Shark Show, where I just gave you the only review that you may or may not ever need or want of this tragic album, you guys. I don't care what the stars say. You know, they gave this bad stars back in the day, I think. That was supposed to be the cover. Yeah, see, it's all over the place. It gets 4, 3, 2. Nobody gives it a 5. With the Phil Spector shit on it, I might have given this like a 4.5 or 5, you guys. But it gets a pretty long write-up. 2 of us. 2 of us, do. Oh, dude, somebody rips that off. I've heard that in some indie song. I like 2 of us, you guys, side 1. I do. I like the version on this album, not Let It Rot Naked. Dig a Pony, not so much. Across the Universe sounded at the time like it doesn't belong on the album. And I later discovered that it's a song from like 1967, and it probably goes more with Tragical History Tour or maybe Yellow Submarine instead of this. But, you know, in a way, once Phil Spector gets a hold of it, it sounds pretty good. I, Me, Mine by Stig O'Hara, probably my favorite song on the album. And Dig It by Ron Nasty, probably my least. Of course, the classic Let It Rot Naked from Dirk McQuickley is one of the greatest songs ever. It's an epic, really good. But Maggie May isn't. Right here on the Clark the Shark Show. I've Got a Feeling, of course, is really good, but One After 909 isn't, and probably should have been left on the cutting room floor. proverbial, if you will. The Long and Winding Road is a bit overrated, and I'm sick of it, but it's good. Sometimes I'm in the mood for that track, and sometimes I'm not. And they're all lit up in blue here, people. For You Blue, Harrison, another good song on the album that doesn't get its due. And of course, Get Back, which is the theme, like the RUTLES were all trying to get back to 1963, which of course they failed at here, and they certainly did not do. In the end, Phil Spector takes this album here, you guys. Here's the album, the way it was supposed to look. You know, like a parody of the 1962 RUTLES. Now they're all hairy and hippies and old, and oh, look at us, we're on marijuana and LSD. Oh, man, look, I still look the same though, me. I relatively. The others are like, well, we're all hippies now, Paul. You know, we're old. Look at us. Now there's the cover that we all know, you guys. Let It Rot Naked, the RUTLES. Right here on the Clark the Shark debacle, fiasco. The Phil Spector version is good. It's great. I want you to buy it, and I want you to buy Let It Rot Naked so you can take it home and beat it in your backyard with a sledgehammer. I'm serious. I want you to buy Let It Rot Naked and do it in honor of Dirk McQuickley, this guy. And I want you to hang a picture of Dirk McQuickley in your backyard next to your barbecue. And I want you to take Let It Rot Naked, the CD. I want you to take it home with the jewel box. And then I want you to take a sledgehammer out to your backyard, and I want you to beat the shit out of the album with the jewel box, the CD and the album and all the paperwork, and beat on it for 25 minutes until it is micro dust, until it is just little pieces of dust. And then I want you to take the poster of Dirk McQuickley and put it on your barbecue. With the CD, I want you to get a dustpan and a broom, sweep up the little dust and plastic particles, put Let It Rot Naked with the poster of Dirk McQuickley on top of your barbecue, cover it with lighter fluid, and fucking burn it. And never even dream nor think of listening to that album ever again. And I want you to listen to Let It Be, produced by Phil Spector, not George Martin. And I want you to love that album forever and buy it over and over at Amazon, Spotify, and iTunes, especially if you're only 18 years old right here in 2024 and you were born long after 9/11. September 11, 2001, when Mohammed Atta and those terrorists from Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, they flew those jetliners into our 2 World Trade Center Twin Towers, and they destroyed the Twin Towers. I want you to destroy Let It Rot Naked by the RUTLES on your barbecue with lighter fluid. That's after you beat the CD with a sledgehammer and destroy it and burn the picture of Dirk McQuickley. And maybe get a picture of Lars Ulrich and his son Zach and burn that too with the CD and the poster of Dirk McQuickley that you burned on your barbecue. And never listen to Let It Rot Naked ever, ever, ever again. Oh, I sound like Taylor Swift there. Never, ever, ever listening to Dirk ever again, you guys. And certainly not Let It Rot Naked. Right here on the Clark the Shark Show, where you got the only review of this album. 2 albums, really. One produced by Phil Spector and one produced by Dirk McQuickley. And I want you got the only review you'll ever want or ever need of this piece of shit disaster, not atmospheric, not melodic album, not talented, horrible, garbage, absolute rubbish, until Phil Spector saved it. You just heard it from me, Clark the Shark, you guys. This was a disastrous, horrible way to end the career of one of the greatest bands that ever existed. I would say the greatest rock and roll band that ever existed. But the way they flamed out and burnt out at the end was like when you spray a can of Raid on a bunch of ants or something. Even worse than that was this album. But thank God for Phil Spector. I praise the Lord above for him, even though he killed that model or prostitute or whatever she was. For a moment, he saved the career of the RUTLES, and I commend him for that. But then Dirk McQuickley, in his never-ending wisdom, he brought back Let It Rot Naked the way we didn't want it and never intended it, and the way God never wanted it, right here on the Clark the Shark Show. Don't buy this album ever, neither version, Phil Spector or Let It Rot Naked. And you tell them you heard that from the ever-loving miracle, all of 5'6", Clark the Shark. Right here from the fabulously entertaining Clark the Shark talk radio show. 1-800-449-8255, people. Go ahead and buy the fucking album. I don't care if you do or don't. But if you do or don't, tell them Clark the Shark said to flip a quarter. And if it lands on heads, buy it. If it lands on tails, maybe don't buy it. Fuck, I don't know. Do what you want, people. And I'm out of here. Peace.